Live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I am your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages we are up on these days. Facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or Twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. Again, whatever works for you, however you're able to get at us and, see, hear, talk about the things that affect us here in the borderland. Those are the right places for you to be. Right place if you got like multiple screens going on, like some kind of Wolf Blitzer situation room kind of thing. I'd want to see a picture of that, frankly, because I just got the couple in front of me here that we used to run the show. So if you're just surrounded by information but wanting to talk about the things here in the borderland, you're absolutely in the right place, or just wanting to get informed about it here. There's no requirement for interaction, but staying informed, that's definitely one that we try to focus on anyway, because dual missions, of course, of talking about the things that affect us here in the borderland, because no one else is going to do that, and just having live local talk radio in order to facilitate that. What we always focus on is kind of underpinnings of most of our thought anyway. So a lot going on today. As we already have Ida Beza Gardner joining us over on the social media. Hello and wave to you as well. We do have a lot more. Okay, maybe just the way I'm thinking about it, focus on the very many high-level positions that are being replaced, facing replacement, being voted on today, up for, there's just a lot of upheaval when it comes to major high-profile, either elected or appointed positions within our community here lately. And yes, I am talking both about what's going on like immediately, as we have had a new Border Patrol sector chief and an interim city manager named today or voted on, respectively, I do believe. And then also we have some other high-profile replacements coming that will be, well, not exactly public votes, but then later on, before too long, we are definitely going to be having a whole lot more when it comes to elected officials overturning upheaval there. So yeah, there has there's just a lot going on there, and we are always trying to make the show better. But if you are wanting to have input on us here, we definitely take suggestions, though. If you're saying, hey, why do you suck? Just know that's probably not going to be taken that well. Anyway, let's get into some of these issues here, because, among all the other replacements that we're going into, we do have some more border enforcement and border-related issues, including more pursuits that are possibly suspected to be, but not clear if it involves more of the rabbiting situation, as I call it. Also, some interesting statewide, or even technically across state lines, issues going on. As Jackson Rena pointing out, yeah, it is Pi Day 3.14. So hope you all have gotten your favorite pie out there. Thanks for the reminder. I often forget to think about fun calendar dates like that. But also, when it comes to Texas, a new state immigration police force being posited is even further part of some of those new laws being put forth during this immigration session we're talking about, as even there is more crackdown being seen south of the border, or at the very least being called for by the Juarez mayor, among other things, including other efforts. So there's quite a lot going on in just a whole lot of ways that we're going to try to break down for y'all today. Of course, we'll be taking those phone calls a little bit later in the hour, as we usually do. But if you're wanting to add your 2 cents over on there, and some very, very, though I'm not sure what to call it, but John Browsden with a not very positive view. Let's just put it that way here, saying a Border Patrol sector chief doesn't matter. There is no longer a southern border. So definitely getting your pessimism on the subject here. But let me just say that I disagree with that entirely, because sure, there may be issues, enforcement, and things going on there, but saying that, now it's just nothing matters, there is no enforcement, completely discounts the efforts of, among other things, the Border Patrol, and particularly what we saw at the bridges across the Rio Grande into El Paso yesterday. Saying that none of that happened is not a good thing in my mind, because there's a whole lot of work, both in the people that I've known, have had contact with, and friends that I've had that have been either on or currently are with Border Patrol, CBP-related agencies, etc. I don't find this useful to them or helpful to them in trying to actually continue that mission. So you're entitled to your opinion. Just know I'm going to disagree with you on that point here, as the idea of border enforcement and what's going on with it is definitely important. So let's start right off with that. There is a new Border Patrol chief for the El Paso sector. Anthony Scott Good will be assuming duties this week. He entered duty in 2001 and was previously in the El Centro sector, California, and been on the job for 22 years. And so the acting chief patrol officer for this area, Peter Jacques, will return his role as deputy chief patrol agent, going to be starting here, of course, since doing that since October 9th of last year. So that's probably an important step, but also kind of highlights the fact that we are seeing quite a lot of upheaval in a lot of high-level positions in our area, with City Council actually voting today to approve a new interim city manager, that retired Army Colonel Carrie Weston, that we had been brought up last week when it was put on the agenda. I do believe that was last Thursday. It was a 7-1 vote, though there was some discussion about the process so far. It kind of seems like there might be at least some on City Council, maybe a little bit on edge about how this whole process is going through. Of course, there have been questions that kind of remain unanswered when it comes to why the decision was made to remove the city manager without cause. And there is, of course, a whole lot more going into the fact that they can't give the cause, or at least that's the open letter that Mayor Oscar Leeser ended up putting that letter out there saying, no, if we're doing it without cause, we can't give cause, because then that would be cause. I mean, I know a little tautological, but still, the idea that we're just doing this because we have made the decision and are moving in this direction. And further elaborating on that point, that this is not a attack or seeking to remove the city manager form of government, but some of the discussion going on in City Council on this, specifically the no vote. City Representative Henry Rivera, as noted by our news partners over at KFOX 14, was noted as saying, quote, "I am very uncomfortable the way this item was posted, Mayor. We weren't included. We weren't included in any discussions whatsoever. I got nothing against Mr. Weston. It was the process that was carried out that makes it look shady." And in addition to that, City Representative Cassandra Hernandez did vote yes, but also had concerns, saying, as further noted here, quote, "I cannot ignore the fact that there is no process here. I'm certainly disappointed the way this was approached, because, Mayor, had you come to council in an inclusive and transparent way, I would think you would have been able to secure all of our support hands down for Mr. Weston based on his accolades and his experience." Weston has previously been working in a part-time capacity for the city in a couple of different capacities, as far as I'm aware, and retired technically in 2022, but does some operations work at the moment. Senior operations officer, but part-time, so not quite sure how much that actually ends up working out there. So he will now be full-time, particularly as there is the move towards, as we get to that late June, early July timeframe of the current transition, of course, coming after the ouster of the current city manager, which is, okay, maybe a little bit of a misnomer, because he's still on the job. He's just got that 120-day countdown that started, well, as of, I've lost the exact amount of days, but where it leads up to being that technically June 29th, I think, is what is being put forth, within the transition happening on June 30th. Anyway, there's a whole lot more going on with that. And just to kind of note it, as I've just been kind of focusing on a lot, that based on this and other replacements that are still pending and coming, of course, we had recently the announcement of the retirement of, or impending retirement of, El Paso's Sheriff Richard Wiles. He will stay on the job, of course, until that next election, but will not be seeking re-election. We then also do have El Paso police chief, the interim police chief that was named Peter Pasillas, after, of course, the passing of late police chief Greg Allen. And then, of course, we do have the district attorney position, and that leads to further conversations about the mayor's position. Now, district attorney, of course, was appointed and will be on the ballot in 2024, but so will the mayor position. Another way that's been brought up here. So no indication that Oscar Leeser won't be running as of yet, but still, that's going to be a pretty packed and important ballot coming up here, is what I'm getting at there. So we've got just a whole lot swirling around with most of these things. So we're going to talk more about the Border Patrol, immigration, etc. parts of this after this next break. Got to take that first one of this hour right now. And again, if you're unhappy with the things that people bring up here or the discussion that we're having, you're welcome to include yourself in it. But if you're trying to say that, well, I don't like what someone is saying, therefore they're not allowed to say it, we're never going to follow that logic, regardless of the direction it's coming from. So, got to take that first break of this hour right now. You're, of course, tuned into Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I am your host, Andrew J. Polk. Back after this break with more here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
On Gateway East at Eastlake, cement bags dropped from a truck onto the road, still blocking one of the right lanes. Accident is blocking the left lane on southbound Airport at Lee Fisher Boulevard. Police are on the scene at that incident. An accident reported Rayner north of Gateway Boulevard at Cypress Avenue, and slow traffic on Zaragoza northbound between the Loop and Montana Avenue. It's a 5-minute delay. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Our American Stories. Who exactly was St. Patrick, and why is he associated with the color green and shamrocks? We'll have the story of St. Patrick's Day. Be sure to catch this week's edition of Our American Stories on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey, El Paso, Ivan Ochoa, General Manager of Sunland Park Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram Fiat. Our goal is to make March an all-time record month in sales, so we'll do whatever it takes to make a deal. Don't wait. Visit us today for huge savings.
Save big on hundreds of new and certified pre-owned vehicles during Ram Truck Month at Sunland Park Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Fiat. Upside down your car, truck, or SUV? We want it, even if you owe thousands more than it's worth. Right now, get $3,000 off MSRP on 2023 Ram 1500s, plus super low 4.9% APR for 72 months. Get $4,000 off MSRP on 2023 Jeep Gladiator Sport, or $4,500 off MSRP on 2023 Jeep Grand Cherokee L models. Worried about your credit? Don't sweat it. Our lenders will push to approve your credit, even if your credit is less than perfect. Trade and upgrade for less at Sunland Park Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Fiat, where buying a car is fun. At I-10 at Sunland Park Drive, or online at sunlandparkdodge.com. Estamos en tu esquina, El Paso. El Paso strong. Includes factory rebate and dealer discount plus TTNL. 4.9% APR is $1,606 per thousand finance on select vehicles with approved credit. Offers not combined.
Welcome to the CPAP Games live from the Hayes bedroom. It's another eventful night, Bruce.
It sure is, Ron. Steve has been struggling with his CPAP.
His wife, Michelle, is trying to contain her rage.
Michelle throws an elbow.
She's leaving for the couch.
Steve should get Inspire.
Absolutely, Bruce. Inspire is a sleep apnea treatment that gives you comfortable, restful sleep with the click of a remote. There's no mask and no hose. Just sleep.
Learn more at inspiresleep.com.
Inspire is not for everyone. Talk to your doctor to see if it's right for you and review important safety information at inspiresleep.com.
It can be dangerously easy to steal your identity during tax season because so much sensitive info is all together.
Before we start the annual meeting of Sean's personal info, has anyone seen Social Security number?
Not me.
Nope.
Nuh-uh.
Oh, no. He's been stolen.
LifeLock by Norton makes it easy to help protect yourself. If you become a victim, we'll work to fix it. No one can monitor all transactions, but you can save up to 25% off your first year with promo code NEWS at LifeLock.com. Identity theft protection starts here.
Next Thursday, you will be caught in an extreme flash flood.
Disasters don't plan ahead, but you can. Talk to your loved ones about making an emergency plan. Get started today at ready.gov/plan. Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I am your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live, streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages at facebook.com/Talk El Paso, more or less the main one. That's where we've had the pages up the longest on social media and where most of the comments come in. So if that's where you're interested in being, just know it is often the Thunderdome comments, because consensus is fleeting and the points are made up and nobody wins. That's a different show. Anyway, if you want to chime in there, you certainly can. Like we have Eric Von Holstein-Rathlow waving and saying, I'm back, or I'm back, is the way I kind of took it reading it anyway. It's got 5 A's in it. So you welcome back. I guess I had noticed without really registering at the absence there. But if you're wanting to chime in, you're more than welcome to, of course, here. and also mild discussion going on with pi and the importance of it. I mean, yeah, the whole, radius and ratio of a circle and the importance that has for the modern world, it's kind of hard to understate, to be honest with you. Anyway, we got a whole lot more we're talking about here, including a lot more border security situations. One thing I wanted to mention before we get too much further into it is that has been some updates, or at least new video out, particularly from our news partners at KFOX 14, of kind of the aftermath of the fire that happened yesterday afternoon, a little bit before we got on air, at the under construction Children's Science Museum, La Nube. Had smoke billowing out of its roof, and so some drone footage has now been shown there. Honestly, I got to be, from my perspective, and I am by no means an expert in this, nor have any in-depth knowledge on what's going on inside of there. The damage to the roof doesn't look too bad, but some of the reports coming out and clarifications now saying that 911 reports specifically that there was a fire on top of the museum and an explosion had happened, according to El Paso Fire Deputy Chief Rick Carson. And then there was of course, heavy smoke. It was put out by about 2:45 yesterday. So honestly, the facade of the building on most sides, except for that one part of the roof, looks fine. At least today it does. And that one part of the roof does seem to have collapsed a bit, but it's honestly, I would call it a minor portion. It's kind of got, the roof has like these 3 cloud-like humps on top of it. Think about how a kid draws a cloud. And it's only on about a third of one of those sections. So no idea what it looks like inside yet. Hopefully it won't be too bad, but that's just the update there. If you want to see some of the pictures and drone video already, you can check it out from our news partners there at KFOX 14. And Eric von Holstein-Rathel clarifying he was given a 30-day sentence in the gulag. This is part of the reason that we have all the platforms that we're on, because we don't control all of the policies that come on these platforms. So we offer multiple different ways to get at us should you encounter anything else going on. So kind of case in point there. Anyway, also RJ over on the YouTube channel saying, I don't think I've ever seen this much change at the top of El Paso's leadership positions. Don't know what it means. Probably nothing, but this has to be precedent setting. Yeah, because, okay, let's just do a count off here of how many positions that we have either being replaced interim right now or are on the bubble here before too long. So, of course, we've got the chief of police. We have impending the sheriff of El Paso. We have the city manager. We have just recently replaced the border patrol chief. We've also got, just a whole lot of questions surrounding the district attorney. What will happen with you get to that next election? And then also technically the mayor will be on that ballot as well, along with other city council positions. But I mean, that's significant enough in its own right. And then we also have at least one other on there that I think I'm forgetting, but yeah, so that's at least 6 right now. That's pretty significant in my mind. So yeah, that's unprecedented. I feel pretty confident about saying, unless we're talking about like the foundation of things. So yeah, that's a little bit fun. But on the whole, one of the reasons we're diving into this today with the new Border Patrol sector chief named for our area, and we will be hoping to have them on to talk about this again. Individual we're talking about here, Anthony Scott Good, to get perspective on the issues and how it's going to be working in this area. Hopefully before too long, give them a chance to get settled, kind of thing. But further being mentioned that more pursuits happening involving state troopers, particularly their presence in our area being pretty constant, particularly when it comes to, well, in its own way, immigration enforcement, I guess it could be argued, particularly with the pursuits, the rabbiting situation. They've been one of the primary agencies that have, RJ saying that the pod people have taken over. We'll see. At least we'll get to vote on some of them, I guess. Lesser of two evils, I guess. Anyway, at least one more potential pursuit happening Tuesday morning with a DPS trooper, pursuit of a black Nissan Titan. With it, ended up going across state lines, and 2 troopers did follow into New Mexico, and it did crash on South Main Street and Selway Road in Mesilla Park, and there were 10 to 12 people in the crash in this vehicle, my understanding. Still wasn't totally known if these were migrants or not, or smuggling situation, but let me just say it's has a lot of similarities with previous such incidents, particularly the way that they ended up doing further enforcement or looking for quote-unquote outstanding subjects with Border Patrol canine units and further troopers. So that's, yeah, it is definitely I wouldn't be surprised if it ends up coming that. I'm willing to be surprised, but given we keep seeing these types of incidents going on, it wouldn't be surprising to me. One interesting thing that I want to get to before we mention some of those statewide situations and potential laws percolating through is that there's actually was a kind of expansive scheme happening in the rest of the state here. By our national news partners. According to a court David in Travis County, over 1,200 legitimate copies of Texas driver's licenses were mailed to 3 addresses just across the border in Oklahoma. It's believed that specifically these were targeted Asian American Texans, so people of Asian American descent and living in Texas. Their information was harvested and used to order duplicates for Chinese people living in the U.S. illegally. According to authorities, a search of the properties in Oklahoma found some 30 pieces of mail from the Texas Driver's License Division. Just 3 weeks ago, DPS officials did tell members of the Texas legislature that more than 3,000 Texas driver's licenses were duplicated through a dark web hack. DPS says that they fixed their website and have tightened requirements to get a duplicate license. An arrest warrant has been issued in Travis County for one Tony Lee. It's not clear if Lee has been taken into county just yet, but that kind of shows that the immigration situation is often more complicated than we even give it credit for in our area. Anyway, we're very focused on border and cross-border traffic, but the dimensions of this are multiple, many beyond that. I mean, it's estimated, at least it was at one point in recent years, that of the number that was often thrown around, kind of the era of that 11 million people living without authorization in the United States, that maybe about half of those were not people who like snuck across or did anything, but visa overstays, because there's not necessarily enforcement with that. I mean, sure, they can't officially get a job, pass I-9, any of those checks, and yet there are still plenty of systems, I guess, in place that would allow that to go through. So still back focused on the border part of the whole issue. We had mentioned yesterday about potential new funding or new avenues for enforcing, say, trespassing or illegal entry at the state level being floated through the Texas legislature. Some more information and more clarification coming out on that today from the AP, specifically that they are proposing legislation that will make it a state felony to cross the border from Mexico illegally, one we talked about, but also create a new border police force that could deputize private citizens. That would, of course, set up some obvious potential conflicts, definitely court cases, I would say, if it ends up going through with some of the federal issues and federal agencies, legislation there, etc. So there's a lot going on to it and a lot of potentials of just conflicts. The specific proposal would continue, of course, Operation Lone Star, definitely be a part of that. And one of the major enforcement items that has come along with that has been trespassing, particularly onto private land. Definitely. So, yeah, there have been, of course, busings that have come along with that, as is further noted. But if there were to be this state border officer position, there would be a chief who would be appointed by the governor, according to the draft bill, at least right now. That position would have to pass reviews of both the state's to move forward with the bill. It would have to, of course, before the end of May, before they get towards the end of the session, but the chief would be able to employ licensed state and local police officers to serve for the border force, as well as quote-unquote law-abiding citizens without felony convictions. And further detailed, private citizens employed by the force would be allowed to participate in, quote, unit operations and functions, end quote, and have the same criminal and civil liability immunity on the job as licensed officers, but they will not have arresting power unless trained and authorized by the governor, according to the current form. And penalties, as we did mention, for that crossing into Texas illegally, again, under this bill, still working its way through the legislature, so we'll keep our eye on that one. So illegal entry into Texas would face up to 10 years in prison and a $10,000 fine for each violation. And this kind of goes further back to rhetoric that has already been, well, it's come up a few times anyway, particularly what Governor Greg Abbott has referred to as the invasion clauses and similar types of things like that. And so citing parts of the Constitution. And yeah, that's an interesting one. The reason that this has kind of gotten more attention, because, of course, this bill was previously filed, but Texas House Speaker Dade Phelan, of course, Republican, specifically said that in a statement, quote, addressing our state's border humanitarian crisis, end quote, was a priority, and that this proposed legislation, of course, as well as a border safety oversight committee, were a must-pass issue. So it's gotten more focus and more attention anyway. And if that actually ends up coming to fruition, like I said, well, another one we'll keep our eye on. There's a whole lot more going in on this, including what is being talked about just south of the border here in our region when it comes to migrants enforcement and crackdowns. So we'll talk more about that after this next break. You're, of course, tuned into Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I'm your host, Andrew J. Polk, talking about that and a whole lot more. Still got those comments going on. I'll pop a few more of those up here. And we got more we'll be discussing. Phone lines open a little bit later, as we usually do. But in any case, stay tuned. More Talk El Paso after this break here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Hello, I'm Erica Castillo with this KFOX 14 News Update. A new Border Patrol chief for the El Paso sector has officially been named. Chief Anthony Scott Good replaces Chief Gloria Chavez this week. Chavez was reassigned 5 months ago to lead the Rio Grande Valley sector where she grew up. Agent Peter Huckes, who took over in the interim, will return to his duties in this sector as deputy chief. And El Paso City Council voted today to name retired Army Colonel Kerry Weston as interim city manager. In a 7-1 vote, Weston was appointed. City Representative Henry Rivera voted against the item. Rivera cited being left out in conversations about the agenda item. Weston currently works for the city part-time as a senior operations officer. The employment contract of Tommy Gonzalez was terminated without good cause after a tie-breaking vote on February 28th. Weston will become full-time and assist Gonzalez up until his last day on June 29th. Weston will assume the interim city manager role on June 30th. I'm Erica Castillo with this KFOX 14 News Update.
News Radio 690. Traffic all day.
Traffic slowing down on the loop in the East Valley, southbound between the Spur and Montana Avenue. It's a 5-minute delay. An earlier crash on Airport Road, southbound at Lee Fisher Boulevard, is blocking the left lane. Police responding to an accident Alameda Avenue at Zaragoza. And road debris on Gateway East at East Lake. Still got one right lane blocked there. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, I'm Chief Meteorologist Brad Montgomery. Lows for tonight getting down into the 40s and 50s, so you want a light jacket or a jacket for your Wednesday morning. And then we're talking about gusty winds for tomorrow. West-southwest winds about 30 to 40 miles per hour and still mild for tomorrow, high around 77 degrees. Continued windy conditions for your Thursday, 20% chance of a shower, a little bit cooler with a high around 70. From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, I'm Chief Meteorologist Brad Montgomery.
This report is sponsored by Our American Stories. He's been called the most important American composer of the 20th century, and his career started out in segregated clubs. We'll have the story of Duke Ellington. Be sure to catch this week's edition of Our American Stories on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts.
Spring travel season is almost here, and whether you're planning to jet off to Japan or cruise around Greece, don't forget to add language learning to your itinerary. The Rosetta Stone app will transform the way you travel. Learn useful words and phrases that will not only help you get around more easily, but also have more meaningful experiences with the new people and places you'll discover. Through March 22nd, get 40% off a lifetime subscription to all 25 of Rosetta Stone's languages. Purchase today at rosettastone.com.
On Ice-T's Daily Game podcast, the cultural icon unveils words of wisdom and motivational quotes he's collected over the years. No punches are pulled as Ice shares his special brand of profound and brutal honesty on topics like romance, success, failure, and more.
You can't sit back and say, I'm going to win this game and not go to practice. You still got to play that game. Faith and your mind is just not going to make it happen.
Listen to Ice-T's Daily Game on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
For the local issues and discussion you won't get anywhere else, turn to Talk El Paso, weekdays at 4 right here on News Radio 690 KTSM, brought to you in part by the El Paso Community Foundation. Sound off on what matters to you, Monday through Friday, 4 to 6 p.m., and let's talk El Paso.
Lowe's always has more ways for you to save. On top of their everyday low prices, pros can save big when buying in bulk. It always pays to be a pro at Lowe's. While supplies last, minimum purchase required. Selection varies by location. Lowe's reserves the right to limit quantities. This report is sponsored by Lowe's.
Attention men under the age of 35. You know what really impresses the ladies? When a guy has a few drinks and later gets pulled over for buzzed driving. That could cost you around $10,000 in fines, legal fees, and increased insurance rates. There goes let's grab dinner and a movie. Oh, I know. You drive more carefully when you're buzzed. You've proven that hundreds of times. A woman admires that kind of confidence. And you've practiced how to speak if a cop does pull you over. Slowly, clearly, and politely, like, "Good evening, officer." A woman admires that kind of foresight. And what woman doesn't find it adorable that you call it buzzed even though the law calls it drunk? You could kiss $10,000 goodbye, along with any chance of having a girlfriend. Because nothing says I'm a catch more than a guy who lives in his parents' basement and calls it my place.
Buzzed, busted, and broke. Because buzz driving is drunk driving. A message from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
At St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, we're fighting against childhood cancer every day. At the heart of this battle are our donors.
Most of us want to make some type of difference in the lives of others. St. Jude does miraculous work.
The fact that no one has to pay, it's a place where everyone is treated as an equal.
Everybody is welcome here, and it doesn't matter your religion or what part of the world you're from. All that is taken away. It just gives you some hope.
It's just a nice feeling to put your energy into something that really does genuinely make a difference in a child's life.
There's just no greater gift. If we have the ability to help, then we have a responsibility to help.
Finding cures, saving children. St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. Find out how you can help at stjude.org.
The most current and comprehensive. Just minutes away at the top and bottom of the hour. And always online at ktsmradio.com. News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I am your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live, streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages that we are over, and Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch, either under Talk El Paso or Andrew J. Polk. I think one of the earlier comments we had was about the scripts and that we use here. So for those unfamiliar with the concept, yeah, we are online and we have our online audience that we certainly appreciate, but the majority of our audience, at least the way the ratings point out here, have never commented, never tuned in online because we are a radio show. So if we find ourselves repeating things because people tune in and out of radio shows. So these are some artifacts of the past if you're solely digital these days, but we certainly appreciate our online and on-air audiences. So if you're wondering why we tend to repeat things like phone numbers, where to find us, etc., part of the reason. Anyway, we have a lot of comments coming in here on a lot of different subjects, including Ted Kors, I think, responding to the whole state border police force, saying don't like that idea at all. I mean, there's a lot of, at the very least, initial legal conflict that is probably going to come up about that. I would be surprised if even move forward with this legislature, the legislative session we have going on in Texas, which there are, I think, enough votes in both chambers, and particularly in leadership, both in both chambers, and particularly in the governor's mansion, that this could move forward with. But I think kind of baked into that, there has to be a recognition that, yeah, this will probably end up in the Supreme Court, to be perfectly honest with you, if not immediately, throughout. And Eric von Holstein-Rathlow kind of clarifying that listen to the show on the radio every day and still appreciates the good job we're doing. So I do appreciate that. Absolutely. And again, reason we mention all the places we are, and I will absolutely repeat what I said there after a little bit. So, I mean, we do take calls and talk about different things. There are other formats that I've been able to sit in on where they do like 4 or even 5 hour shows, and they end up, it's almost like 2 shows in once, because they end up repeating it, because particularly in mornings, people driving in the car, they're not sitting through all of it. We're not quite there yet, maybe in the future, but if we have any of those kind of format changes or mild changes to how we do put things forth, we'll be sure to have that all out there. So another big thing going on besides everything going on with that enforcement is, of course, enforcement south of the border, particularly in Juarez, it's been more of a focus than maybe it had been in previous years within, let's call it the last 6 months or so. Specifically, previously, as is noted by El Paso Matters in their article out today, actually titled "Juarez Mayor Says City Will Crack Down on Migrants, Urges Residents Not to Give Money to Panhandlers." One of the things that they note a little bit further down in the story was, of course, the back in late November of last year, the enforcement that happened on the border encampment, the kind of rows of tents that had popped up within sight of the Border Highway West Extension, not too far from, say, Spur 1966, near the UTEP campus, near the Rio Grande. Of course, this was before there was then, I do believe anyway, the disaster declaration, and therefore the arrival of Operation Lone Star, Texas State Troopers, and even the Texas Guard, among other things in our area. But that was a almost entirely south of the border enforcement effort being done by Mexican and specifically Juarez officials. So this could be seen in the same vein as that. But as we mentioned yesterday, there were some very interesting comments that I took from, among other things, from U.S. Representative Henry Cuellar from, not exactly our region, but I think he's right on the other side of the Texas 23rd, if I'm not mistaken my maps here. So he's technically only a district away, even though that's a district that's bigger than some states. Anyway, point is, that frustration, these things messing up regular life, like there's an amount of tolerance that has obviously been expressed and demonstrated, but that you start messing with daily life and our livelihoods, etc., that could cause further issues. That's kind of what Cuellar was getting at, that people doing these efforts, including what we talked about yesterday that happened over the weekend, Sunday afternoon specifically, when there was those essentially shutdowns of at least a couple of the international bridges, and from what I've further seen, at least maybe one railroad bridge from Juarez to El Paso, primarily in south central El Paso kind of region, Paso del Norte, Santa Fe Bridge, etc. That's the people doing this need to be careful, because if they're doing this wantonly, they could find themselves losing a lot of the support. And I would say that this could be read as definitely a symptom of that, as further noted by El Paso Matters here. Specifically, Ciudad Juarez Mayor Cruz Perez Cuellar, during a Monday press conference, said the city will begin cracking down on migrants in the streets of the city and increase police presence at the international bridges. And so, as translated here, saying, quote, "We have arrived at a crucial point in time to put a stop to this before we reach a breaking point." And he says that the actions that were being seen, particularly on Sunday, calling that protest, quote, "totally unrelated to the border reality," and also specifically saying not to give money to migrants who are on the city streets, saying many don't want to work because they get more money from panhandling on the streets. And so this kind of the case in point about the whole emotions, tolerance, willingness to have this and to support it. This is what the mayor said, quote, again, Mayor of Juarez in this case, quote, "The truth is that our patience level is running low. It must also be said that the areas such as the International Bridge are federal, and there we have restrictions on actions we can take. That is to say, we do not have the power to enter the bridges in some federal zones where this type of where there were this type of problems. However, we do have an obligation to take care of the city." And so there's even more stakeholder meetings that were going on, and there have even been complaints that he noted from those in the streets asking for donations. And the further note there from Secretary of Public Security Cesar Omar Munoz Morales, saying that primarily women who travel alone who, quote, "feel intimidated by migrants," further adding, if people break the law, they will be punished even if they are migrants, and that they are stepping up and including surveillance operations on the, again, southern side of the actual international bridges itself. So this is very interesting because we don't often have a chance to talk about, at least from the perspective north of the border, what is going on south of it. I mean, we've had some complaints, some calls, some further discussion about kind of the considerations, mostly on the Mexican federal level, what they are doing, what the policies are. I feel like, talked more about AMLO than just about any other type of policy or policy maker in Mexico recently, of course, referring there to Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador, the president of Mexico, and his reluctance might be a generous way to put it. Intransigence might be another way to put it when it comes to working together. I don't know. Loose cannon is the best way I can still think about him, because stability is not exactly one of the things that I think about when I imagine his personage and character. So there's a whole lot more going on, including in Juarez. Some things that I think have come up in local news, but is further noted by El Paso Matters here, that there actually were a police raid at a migrant dining room at the Cathedral de Nuestra Señora de Guadalupe in downtown Juarez, the Cathedral of Juarez, and that they were detained, and at least the El Diario de Juarez reported that the detainees allegedly had been physically and psychologically tortured for more than 7 hours at police facilities. So you should definitely check out the El Paso Matter articles on this, laying out both the current statements, what has led up to this as well, including what some human rights groups are saying on this, among other things, about the enforcement and what's coming out of this. So this is so much to say that that incident on Sunday, as much as it was definitely over and had reopened hours before, I mean, the complete day before we ended up getting on air, just to say that this won't have any other impacts would be very wrong there. Blanco Jimenez, appreciate my Spanish pronunciation. Muchas gracias. I do try. Again, I'm conversational, but I fall off the fluency bike there for a bit. So no, we won't be doing the show in Spanish, but when we got the names, we'll say them as correctly as I can anyway. So that's a whole lot going on with immigration-related situations, leadership involved with them here in our area today, but there's a whole lot more coming up. I got at least one more thing that I'll bring up, probably a little bit after this break, but you are, of course, tuned in to Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I am your host, Andrew J. Polk. There's a whole lot swirling in and around the community. When we don't often chase individual crimes, or at least the coverage of them, the discussions that we have, but we got at least one more thing. One more thing that we will be discussing when it comes to that, as we are for the comments coming on over the social media. One not fun story, but one that I've heard from more than a couple of people. So taking that next break right now, we will go ahead and open up those phone lines as well. That number to call, of course, is 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
I-10 westbound at the Reynolds exit, a couple of vehicles up on the right shoulder. An accident still blocking the left lane southbound airport at Lee Fisher Boulevard. Police are still on the scene for that. Road construction has the right lane closed in the East Valley at Sergeant Major underpass to the Loop. That's till 5 o'clock. And it's slow on Zaragoza northbound between the Loop and Montana Avenue. 7-minute delays. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Red Pilled America.
Should married couples go into business together? This week on Red Pilled America, we dive into that question. After 20 years of being married and working together, you could say we're experts on the subject. Listen to Red Pilled America anywhere you get podcasts. That's Red Pilled America.
I'm Martin Hoke, the inventor of Navage Nasal Care, and I love Navage. I've told you about how your nose is the body's air filter, that Navage's powered suction will help flush out allergens, viruses, mucus, and germs, and that Navage will help you breathe better. But what do other people say about Navage? Like Haley, quote, Navage is the best thing I bought. I love it. My nose feels so clear now and I can breathe. I've been struggling with a stuffy nose for weeks. I bought Navage and it's amazing. Or this one. I use Navage every night, could not imagine life without it. I have 5 cats, and before I found Navage, I was a clogged mess. Now I breathe so much better, unquote. Those are 2 of over 100,000 online reviews praising Navage, the all-natural solution trusted by over 3 million people to help you breathe better, sleep deeper, snore less, and stay healthier without drugs. Navage is available at Walmart, CVS, Walgreens, Target, Rite Aid, and online. Navage, Navage, clean nose, healthy life.
Hey, El Paso Paso, Ivan Ochoa, General Manager of Sunland Park Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram Fiat. Our goal is to make March an all-time record month in sales, so we'll do whatever it takes to make a deal. Don't wait. Visit us today for huge savings.
Save big on hundreds of new and certified pre-owned vehicles during Ram Truck Month at Sunland Park Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Fiat. Upside down your car, truck, or SUV? We want it, even if you owe thousands more than it's worth. Right now, get $3,000 off MSRP on 2023 Ram 1500s plus super low 4.9% APR for 72 months. Get $4,000 off MSRP on 2023 Jeep Gladiator Sport or $4,500 off MSRP on 2023 Jeep Grand Cherokee L models. Worried about your credit? Don't sweat it. Our lenders will push to approve your credit, even if your credit is less than perfect. Trade and upgrade for less at Sunland Park Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Fiat. Where buying a car is fun at I-10 at Sunland Park Drive or online at sunlandparkdodge.com. Estamos en tu esquina El Paso strong. Includes factory rebate and dealer discount plus TTNL. 4.9% APR is $1,606 per thousand finance on select vehicles with approved credit. Offers not combined.
If cold candidate calls aren't turning into hot hiring leads, then you need Indeed. Because Indeed's powerful hiring platform makes it easy to attract, screen, and interview candidates all from one place. Find your next great hire visiting Indeed.com/credit.
News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I am your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so. A lot of ways to interact with the show, particularly at this point during the program when we do have those phone lines open. The number to do so is 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM, like Groku Manda chiming in, RJ promotes. Those also dropping those likes and reacts that we certainly do appreciate, including Amber Banda, Sean Gardner, Ted Kors, James Radcliffe, Angel Villagran, James Holmes, Flaco Jimenez, Monica Cervantes, and at least a couple others here, but it's being a little finicky at the moment here. I certainly appreciate you. You are not forgotten. Also, Groku Manda, appreciate that. But it doesn't show me all of them for some time. It's annoying, but we'll get through it. Oh, Monica Cervantes and Robbie Flores, if I didn't say that already, so appreciate that. But before we get to those phone lines, and don't worry, we definitely will. We still have them open if you want to get on there. Just one incident that has come up is reported by our news partners at KFOX 14 yesterday. Again, we don't usually chase the car crashes, the domestic disturbances, the deaths that happen in our city. There's also Willie Jenkins chiming in over there, unrelated to what I'm talking about. But there's at least one incident that was reported there. Article title, quote, "I don't feel safe," end quote. El Paso mother says SUV passenger pointed gun at kids playing outside. And the reason I bring this up, as much as, again, individual crimes, unless they reach a huge proportion, like, Cielo Vista, the shooting there and the investigation into it definitely is something that we will continue to focus on, among other things. But I bring this one up. The incident described as people driving by reportedly put a gun out a window and pointed at 11-year-old son and a group of friends playing outside in their neighborhood on Sunnylands Avenue around 3:30 p.m. when a car full of teens drove by and one of the passengers in the car pulled out a gun. And so the mother there, Sevdo Williams, and her son Tyler, obviously upset. This happened February 5th. And they do actually have surveillance video that was of it with a white SUV and a red car driving by. Williams said one of the kids yelled at the people in the car before they returned a second time with a gun drawn. And sure, kids yelling at your car may make you upset, but nothing particularly justifies this. And the reason I bring this up very specifically is that this is not the only time I've heard of this recently. This is the first time I've seen particularly like video and evidence of it, but I've heard from at least one other person that I know that they were driving around. Their family actually was driving around, and due to a, I guess, apparent road rage type situation, someone stuck a gun out of a window and brandished it at them. And then, of course, we've had a little bit more, well, less recently, but very well publicized. We did end up talking about this one, the incident of the just super achiever genius driving around and taking a video of himself shooting out of a window of his vehicle towards a neighborhood. And the whole "what goes up must come down" just completely lost on this individual, and very much laughing. It was very satisfying to me to see his change in expression for his booking photo because, yeah, they tracked his butt down. But the fact of the matter is that these types of incidents involving guns and vehicles and people threatening other people with them is unacceptable. And this is the kind of thing when we talk about enforcement for gun crimes being necessary because, hey, to say that this can just be let go, I mean, I'm hoping that something can be fought if there can be the actual license plate being seen from this, because the idea of people being threatened for being kids being in their front yard, playing near the street is just, that's not where I want to live and should be considered absolutely unacceptable in this area. Now, in this case, the mother has said that she does not want to press charges, but wants them to apologize. I think that's incredibly generous and would absolutely say that this person should be prosecuted because, again, the fact that this has been, again, more than once that I've just heard of in my own life and in the people that I've known means that, I mean, once is way too many and should be demonstrated as absolutely unacceptable to our community. So that's just my kind of personal rant on one of the stories coming out here today. Everyone Holstein Raffle asking if they did get a license plate. Not totally sure about that. There has been a police report filed. I think they're looking for anyone more to come forward with that. So if you want to see that story for yourself, if you think you might know anything, again, the article titled, "I Don't Feel Safe. El Paso Mother Says SUV Passenger Pointed at Gun at Kids Playing Outside." It's one of the top trending stories from our news partners over at KFOX14, so kfoxtv.com, because, yeah, this cannot ever be considered acceptable in our community. So we're going to kind of leave it on that note for right now and take that break, take the top of the hour. So if you're on the phone line, stay there. If you want to get on that line, then again, number to do so is 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
I-10 westbound at the Reynolds exit, a couple of vehicles up on the right shoulder. An accident still blocking the left lane, southbound airport at Lee Fisher Boulevard. Police are still on the scene for that. Road construction has the right lane closed in the East Valley at Sergeant Major underpass to the Loop. That's till 5 o'clock. And it's slow on Zaragoza northbound between the Loop and Montana Avenue. 7-minute delays. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
Text and whatever. Just don't text and drive. Visit StopTextsStopWrecks.org. A message from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Records, milestones, firsts, lasts, and everything in between. What happened today in sports history on iHeartRadio?
What's happening, fellow sports fans? It's Andy West. Let's take a look back on this day in sports history, March 15th. We'll start off today in 1988. NFL team owners voted to allow owner Bill Bidwell to move the Cardinals from St. Louis to Phoenix for the upcoming NFL season. The team became the Phoenix Cardinals. They would become the Arizona Cardinals in March of 94. Today in 1997, North Carolina's Dean Smith becomes the career victory leader when the Tar Heels beat Colorado 73-56. Smith, with 877 victories, passes Kentucky coaching legend Adolph Rupp. He's now 7th on the list. Former Duke coach Mike Krzyzewski leads the list with 1,202 wins. And today in 2009, Detroit beats Columbus 4-0 to become the first team in NHL history to top 100 points in 9 straight seasons. The Red Wings, the Stanley Cup champions at the time, would go back to the Stanley Cup again in 2009, but lose to Pittsburgh 4-3.
Now you know. Today in sports history on iHeartRadio.
Freedom of speech lives here.
To me, freedom of speech is being able to say anything you want.
El Paso's News Radio. News on the hour, KTSM. Traffic and weather all day. News Radio 690 is KTSM AM El Paso, an iHeart radio station.
NBC News Radio, I'm Brian Shook. President Biden is taking action to curb gun violence as he met with survivors of a recent mass shooting in Monterey Park, California on Tuesday. In a speech, the president laid out the details of his new executive order on gun control.
This executive order helps keep firearms out of dangerous hands. as I continue to call on Congress to require background checks for all firearm sales.
It aims to increase background checks, raise awareness of red flag laws, and crack down on firearms dealers who are violating the law. A nor'easter is bringing snow, rain, and high winds to the East Coast. There are well over 300,000 power outages, and flight delays are piling up as the strengthening storm brings heavy snow and high winds. Upstate New York and most of New England are feeling the brunt of the storm. Signature Bank is being sued by shareholders after it was taken over by state regulators in New York. They say the bank perpetrated a fraud when it said it was in a good position financially just before collapsing. Signature Bank is one of the financial institutions to fail in recent days. The other was California's Silicon Valley Bank. Southwest Airlines is announcing their plans to avoid another mass cancellation event following the incident last December. Lisa Taylor reports.
President and CEO Bob Jordan says Southwest will increase staffing levels during the winter and upgrade crew scheduling systems to ensure there are enough workers during extreme weather situations. In addition, Southwest is purchasing additional de-icing equipment and engine heaters as part of its action plan for cold weather challenges. The Dallas-based airline said it lost more than $200 million in the fourth quarter of last year due to the cancellations and expects another loss in this quarter. I'm Lisa Taylor.
Former British Prime Minister Boris Johnson will be in the hot seat next week over a scandal that eventually led to his resignation. You're listening to the latest from NBC News Radio. The Ohio Supreme Court is getting involved in the legal debate over abortion in the state. Jack Crumley has more.
The state Supreme Court will review two questions: whether abortion clinics can challenge Ohio's law that bans abortion after cardiac activity is detected in a fetus, a law that's currently on hold, and also whether or not the state attorney general can appeal judges' orders that preliminarily block state laws. This decision will not involve the constitutionality of abortion itself. The Cincinnati Enquirer reports that recently appointed Justice Joe Dieters has recused himself because he's among those named in the lawsuit from abortion clinics trying to overturn the heartbeat bill. Judge Matthew Byrne is taking his place. Cleveland.com reports he's an advisor to an anti-abortion counseling center.
Los Angeles prosecutors will not retry convicted rapist Harvey Weinstein on charges where a jury failed to reach a verdict. The disgraced film producer was convicted in connection to one victim, but there was a hung jury with respect to some other accusers. After the December guilty verdict, Weinstein was sentenced in February to 16 years in prison. A city in Arizona is honoring a major pop star. Liz Warner explains.
Oh, look what you made me do. In Arizona City, celebrating pop singer Taylor Swift in a big way. To honor the start of her upcoming Eras tour, the city of Glendale will temporarily change its name to Swift City during her concert dates March 17th and 18th. Swift's tour highly anticipated after fans had issues trying to access tickets on Ticketmaster.
The 2026 World Cup in North America will have 24 more games than originally planned. The change will feature 48 teams playing 104 games over around 40 days in the U.S., Mexico, and Canada. The new format was approved at a FIFA meeting, the sport's global governing body and organization that runs the World Cup. The amount of games is 40 more than last year's tournament in Qatar. Brian Shook, NBC News Radio.
Get ready to celebrate your favorite podcasts at our iHeart Podcast Awards. Tune in as the best podcasts take home awards in categories like comedy, crime, pop culture, and more. Watch on iHeartRadio's YouTube channel and Facebook page. And listen right here, tonight at 9.
Are you looking for some non-dairy deliciousness? Discover the rich, creamy taste of Planet Oat Oat Milk. It's delicious in coffee, smoothies, cereal, or by the glass. Planet Oat Oat Milk tastes every bit as marvelous as the delicious moments it inspires. Pick it up in your local grocery store today.
This report is sponsored by Blindster.com.
Hi, I'm Kyle at Blindster.com. Shopping for new blinds? At Blindster, we offer over 50 different blinds, shades, and shutters at low prices, custom made for your windows, and shipping is free. Shop at home and order 10 free samples of any product before you buy. Blindster.com.
Welcome to the CPAP Games live from the Hayes bedroom. It's another eventful night, Bruce.
It sure is, Ron. Steve has been struggling with his CPAP.
His wife, Michelle, is trying to contain her rage.
Michelle throws an elbow.
She's leaving for the couch.
Steve should get Inspire.
Absolutely, Bruce. Inspire is a sleep apnea treatment that gives you comfortable, restful sleep with the click of a remote. There's no mask and no hose. Just sleep.
Learn more at InspireSleep.com.
Inspire is not for everyone. Talk to your doctor to see if it's right for you and review important safety information at InspireSleep.com.
Hi, guys. It's Mark. Are you struggling with erectile dysfunction? Did you know that a major medical breakthrough is now available and it isn't a pill? Today, Tuesday, March 14th, we're running a one-day special you won't want to miss out on. Northbrook Medical Clinic uses is the most powerful form of wave therapy. This is a technology clinically shown to repair blood vessels and improve blood flow. It's backed by 60 clinical studies, including from Cambridge. If you're ready to regain that spark in the bedroom, today is your day. Call us now and you'll qualify for the assessment and ultrasound totally free. You'll also get a gift that can produce rapid and powerful results in the bedroom in minutes. You're going to love that one, guys. Trust me. And today only, we're offering 5 tune-up treatments to our patients free. This is an unprecedented offer worth hundreds of dollars, but call today and qualify totally free. Call 915-529-9000. That's 915-529-9000. Guys, put a stop to your erectile dysfunction and get your life back. Call Northbrook Medical Clinic now to qualify. This offer ends today. 915-529-9000.
Pray.com's Meditative Prayers podcast is the best way to bring God's perfect peace into your night. Each meditative prayer helps you focus on God, fight anxiety, sleep better, and more.
As you close your eyes, ask God to come and have fellowship with you. Open yourself to the Holy Spirit and ask Him to minister to you.
Listen to Meditative Prayers on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcasts.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I am your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages once more with feeling, facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or twitch.tv, Andrew J. Polk. Again, you can use those if those are amenable to you, or it's the easiest one for you, that's the right place for you to be. Any of those, including on air, online, social media, etc., or even ones unknown to me. Yeah, it's possible. We get posted around sometimes. Anyway, if you want to chime in, particularly on the social media, you can. A lot of people doing so right now, adding their 2 cents on some of the issues involving us here, including at least one comment. Eric Von Holstein-Rathlow on the whole gun pointed at kids out of a car story, saying doesn't want to press charges. The kids in that car obviously aren't getting discipline at home. They don't belong in a civil society. I mean, I think that the idea of grace, potentially, maybe being very generous to the mother in that case, Williams, saying that she doesn't want them, she doesn't want to be charged, just to be apologize. I mean, I don't particularly blame her, but I will say that it needs to be made perfectly clear that this is not in any way, shape, or form acceptable, not just against the letter, but the spirit of the law. Because the thing is, someone can say, oh yeah, I pointed a gun at a kid and I was caught on camera and I just had to apologize to him. I don't like the precedent that might set, among other things. But we got a lot more going on here, including those phone lines open full up now at the moment. But if you want to get on a little bit later, keep that number handy, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. We do have Robert in Chaparral on the line with us here right now. Robert, thanks for joining us.
Hi, Andrew. Thank you for taking my call. I appreciate it.
No, sure thing. What's on your mind?
Yeah, here's one of those. You mentioned the dimensions and the impacts, and we wanted to cover one of those dimensions and impacts you were talking about earlier.
Sure.
Like earlier this afternoon, I went to the post office, and are you aware of the new shipping requirements that have come up?
For like the overweight cargo zone, or what? To what are you referring?
Shipping to Europe.
Oh, to Europe. Okay, no, not particularly in this case. What was it that you were wanting to address?
Yeah, well, they actually came up March 1st, so just this last week they came up, and I was going there to ship a package to the post office this afternoon, and the package was just over 6 pounds.
Okay.
And I was shipping it to the UK, and I expected maybe 25, 30, could have been 40. Anyways, I wasn't expecting $96, $96 for my 6 pounds. And so I asked him, well, I wanted to refigure it then and everything. And I was told, and anyways, the 3 pounds, if I got it down to 3 pounds, it still would have been $56. And part of it's because the new regulations that have come through. And these regulations have come through basically because of the immigration that has been going on, and he specifically told me, that because of the gangs, the immigration gangs that have come up there and such, and some of the shipping regulations include that and I was going to send over some items unacceptable to go over to European Union, and UK is not part of the European Union anymore, but they're included in this. So shipping to Europe and Norway or Switzerland, unacceptable are food items, but acceptable are blueberry cookies, prepared cakes, and rice. And then other unacceptable items are gifts. So you can't just send gifts over to people. And acceptable are dolls, remote control cars, and Rubik's Cube. And unacceptable items are also clothes. So you can't send any clothes over to Europe, Norway, or Switzerland. But you can accept, what is acceptable is white glasses, insulated winter coat, and women's sundress. And I was told, and in addition to what I would have to pay, the $56, anyway, what I was saying too, $56 was the minimum I would be paying for that 3-pound package. And that's because of the gangs that have come up there. And including the $56 I would have to be paying, there's also been put a tariff on the other end. So those that I am sending to would have to pay a certain amount, could have been the same $56, to receive in that package. And I could get no insurance for my package and no tracking for my package. And I was told that that's also the same thing that's happening within Mexico. You can't put insurance or tracking because the gangs and things are stolen in there. And used to, Andrew, I'd be able to send to Europe. I can safely send, and I recently did. I can safely send right now a package to Africa, and most except perhaps one, most of my packages got to the destination that it's went to. But I think so. You brought up the dimensions and the impacts immigration is having.
Sure,
that's one impact that I don't know that we're necessarily looking at as well. And Europe as well has put it on themselves too, because back in the 60s, 70s, I lived over in Europe for a short time. Back in the 60s and 70s, they allowed immigrants to come into their countries, whether it was Netherlands, whatever, Sweden, and to come do work that they would not necessarily do. And so generations grew up. And so there's a lot of, like France, for instance, the immigration is going to outnumber and such. Anyways, Europeans kind of put it on themselves, but that's something that we're not looking at, that they actually had to change the amount that it costs us to ship overseas because of the immigration, that the gangs that are stealing and everything. And there's been I've kept in touch with some of that happening overseas. Like there's been a lot of grooming going on and rape gangs that have happened and such. And so anyways, Andrew, I wanted to share that impact that I just found out today. And that's probably one of those things that your most famous or infamous callers would like to investigate, to are approving of the illegal, and some of that's legal, but a lot of it's illegal immigration that is affecting Europe and can affect us in the same way.
I will say I had heard about there being description changes, and looking it up here, the Postal Service did say that starting as of the beginning of this month, March 1st, 2023, that there would be new customs rules applying to all outbound international packages going to EU custom following countries, which does even include military and diplomatic mail to those locations, and that the declaration form is different, so it has to be very specific. Mentioned here on their list at USPS.com. In this case, unacceptable for description would be clothes, acceptable would be men's shirts, girls' vests, boys' jackets, etc. So I had seen that note go by, and so looking into it more, specificity is being sought. Hadn't heard of any of those. implications. But what I will say is that, I mean, the immigration situation has continued to evolve overseas. Certainly, there's even been implications, even more that some pushes for, and particularly, international boundary crossing there, actually being used as a form of that hybrid warfare that is being pushed by the Russian government in general, and specifically the Wagner Group, which is another whole kettle of fish, and decidedly into Friday territory. Let's make that perfectly clear, but it's relevant to bring up into this circumstance. But yeah, I mean, these things, by immigration and border security by its very definition, is an international issue. So interesting you bring it up this way, because I know there are a lot of people around here that have people that may be deployed to some of these locations, and part of it, so that part of it may be affecting them, but the larger dimension of it, like you mentioned there, is interesting, at least.
Yeah, it's definitely affected me because I couldn't send my package, and I'm a little eccentric at some of the things I send. Like they don't have the good stuff that we have, so I was sending a can of Menudo over.
Yeah, okay.
But it was going to cost me $96 to send that over. And so we're going to have to limit what we can bless our friends and families with because of that.
Interesting. Well, that's one aspect that I guess I hadn't totally connected with the situation, but interesting you bring that up. So thanks for the point in the call. Do appreciate it.
You bet. Thank you.
And with that, we're going to go ahead and take that next break right now. Coming out of this break, we got more calls, we got more comments, we got a lot of what we're going to be getting to. So stay tuned. More Talk El Paso after this break. Again, that phone number, if you want to get on the line, that number to do so is 915-544-5876, 915-544-KTSM. Back after this break with more Talk El Paso here on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
On Border Highway westbound at the Zaragoza exit in the lower valley, a vehicle fire has been moved off to the left shoulder. Accident reported northbound Yarborough at Gateway East. Slow traffic Montana Avenue on and off, slowing eastbound from McRae out to Zaragoza, 11-minute delays. And Zaragoza northbound is slow from the loop to Montana Avenue with 7-minute delays. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Blindster.com.
Hi, I'm Kyle at Blindster.com, and I sell custom blinds designed for do-it-yourselfers. Unlike stock blinds offered at big box retailers, Blindster blinds are custom made for your windows, and shipping is free. Don't hire an expensive pro. Do it yourself and save big at Blindster.com.
I studied Spanish in college and never got fluent, but then I tried Babbel.
Want the most effective way to learn another language? In just 15 minutes a day, Babbel's bite-sized lessons will have you learning another language in as little as 3 weeks.
Babbel is all conversation-based, so it gets you speaking quickly about things you actually talk about in the real world.
You'll really see a difference in how you can speak and how conversational you can be in just a few weeks.
Babbel isn't just lessons. You can listen to podcasts, play games, watch videos. You can even take live online classes with a language teacher. There are so many ways to learn with Babbel.
The lessons online and in the app make it easy to learn from pretty much anywhere.
University studies have shown that using Babbel for 15 hours is equivalent to a semester of college Spanish. If you want to learn a new language, there's no better way than Babbel. Go to Babbel.com to try for free. That's Babbel.com. Babbel.com.
You're invited to enjoy 50% off your purchase during the semi-annual Friends and Family event, only at Banana Republic Factory. Shop this week only for limited time prices at your nearest Banana Republic Factory store or online.
Here's football star Tony Romo for Skechers Max Cushioning Footwear.
You know when you go to your kid's game and you have to sit on those uncomfortable, super hard bleachers? That's how I feel now when I wear regular shoes. Why? Because once I started wearing Skechers Max Cushioning, I've been spoiled with how amazing extra cushioning feels. Skechers maxed out the cushioning with a thick, comfy slice of super light Ultra-Go cushioning for a soft, pillowy feel with every step.
See all the fashionable styles of Max Cushioning at a Skechers store, Skechers.com, or wherever stylish footwear is sold.
You're invited to enjoy 50% off your purchase during the semi-annual Friends and Family event, only at Banana Republic Factory. Shop this week only for limited time prices at your nearest Banana Republic Factory store or online.
180 over 111, and I had a stroke. I couldn't speak or walk.
This is high blood pressure. Get back on your plan. Go to loweryourhbp.org. Brought to you by the American Stroke Association, American Medical Association, and the Ad Council.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I am your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch, either under Talk El Paso or Andrew J. Polk. Yeah, there's a lot of conversation going on over there, including a lot of, that thunderdoming of politics and not even necessarily the issues within it, but just the, better than you are, everyone is wrong, or you're awful if you don't agree with me kind of thing. Like, sure, if you want to do that, that's over there, but the ones we'll talk about feature, hopefully take the calls from, are those want to talk about the issues, because that's where the rubber hits the road for the most part here. You can tell me that you're true blue, red-blooded, whatever you want, as long as you are, but what are you actually going to do with it, if, like, elected, expressing the political power, etc., is always the more important question than just saying, hey, everyone who disagrees with me sucks. Anyway, let's get back to those phone calls now. Again, that number to call, full up at the moment, but keep it handy, 915-544-5876. 915-544-KTSM. We do have Andrew on the west side here with us right now. Andrew, thanks for joining us.
Yes, Andrew, thank you. I'd like to talk about two things. One was House Bill 20, which you mentioned earlier.
Oh, yes.
And the other one is that incident that happened, that those people in the SUV pointing a gun at kids.
Yes. Okay.
Okay, starting with HB 20, I don't think the state of Texas has any legal standing on that, because back in 2012, there was Arizona versus U.S., and basically a similar law where Arizona wanted to, detain illegal immigrants and send them back, and there was other things involved. But basically, the Supreme Court came back and said that it violated the enumerated powers of Congress and is preempted by federal statute.
Yeah, and so just from the Oyas on here, that's saying, the case in which the court found that Arizona state immigration provisions conflicted in part with federal immigration laws. So, like I said, it does seem like this is a trajectory being focused on for this legislative session. At the very least, there has been buy-in from leadership of both the House and the Senate, and the governor has, this is very much in line with the efforts that he has been pushing for and very much been putting forth as signature programs, i.e. Operation Lone Star. So I would expect that this would probably at least get some traction, if not actually end up passing. But, and the massive but, there has to be anyone actually thinking like, oh yeah, we're going to do this. If anyone's wanting to do this besides anything besides symbolism as we're sticking it to the administration or something like that by spending billions of dollars, there has to be recognition that there is a lot of legal going on here. Arizona versus U.S. is an interesting one you bring up here, but then of course in last year, August of 2024, specifically it was actually June of last year, August 24th is when the article I was looking at was last updated. June, there was the Supreme Court held that the Biden administration's termination of the Migrant Protection Protocol's MPP, so-called Remain in Mexico policy, did not violate the Immigration and Nationality Act because it was a administration policy. And so those just kind of like laying out these many layers, including what you brought up of, there is federal control. And when it comes to policies and setting of them, if there isn't a law passed, there is leeway and room within the executive branch to implement things like this CBP One app, which still, I argue, smacks a lot of MPP, but, horse of a different color kind of thing. Point is that, there's going to be a whole lot of legal hurdles and challenges if they're really wanting to focus on this, which leads me to think that maybe there is a little bit more symbolism going on here than maybe actually trying to be effective, which never really plays that well with me, I got to say.
True. Also, the second part to that ruling by the Supreme Court, incidentally, it's 567 U.S. 387. But it said that Arizona may inquire about a person's legal status during lawful encounters, but cannot implement its own immigration laws.
Yeah, that is interesting. And I mean, the majority of Arizona, or at least a good chunk of it, and of course, our pretty much almost entire border broadcast region here on the borderland is covered further by the Border Patrol. That whole 100-mile exclusion zone isn't the right way to put it, but special enforcement, where there is even more leeway for those agencies and related ones to ask those questions, to do those kind of investigations, and even detain people without necessarily having the higher standard that exists in the rest of the U.S., such as, probable cause, reasonable suspicion, etc.
Correct. Now, getting back to that encounter in East El Paso where those people in the SUV pointed a gun at those kids.
Yes.
Okay. Supposedly the mom does not want to press charges.
That's what she has said currently. That she doesn't know if their people have been able to be caught. It's not clear to me if there was like a license plate captured or not. I'm hopeful that it is, and why kind of wasn't one of the reasons I brought it up is to say that if anyone knows about that. Again, the article title over there with our news partners at KFOX 14. I don't feel safe, El Paso. Mother says SUV passenger pointed gun at kids playing outside. And they show the video there. It might not be the right angle to have caught the license plate, unfortunately, but if anyone knows about that, reach out, let them or police know. But yeah, she said a little bit further way down there that she did file the police report, but that she says she does not want to press charges and just wants whoever was involved to apologize, saying, quote, at least apologize for what they did so my kid can be safe playing outside and I can feel better when he is outside. So I'm not going to fault anyone for potentially offering grace, but I got to say that I would disagree with that as an action to be taken because, again, demonstrating that this is absolutely unacceptable is, well, as being put elsewhere here, RJ saying people pointing guns is one step away from people pulling triggers, and that's a very mild way to put it about how I feel about it.
Correct. And well, I think she's being very generous, but I totally don't agree with her. Even though she may not want to press charges, put it this way: the arresting officer can file charges on behalf of the state of Texas. So that's a given. And what these people did is a first-degree felony, aggravated assault with a deadly weapon.
Yeah, and I mean, even if someone doesn't want to press charges in severity of cases, I mean, that's not the only factor. I mean, that would mean that any murder victim that doesn't have family would just be, well, there's no one to press charges against you, so you're off scot-free. That's obviously not how that works. So there's absolutely, the interest of the state, like you mentioned, that could come at play here. And I would kind of hope that two parts, that this person, these people involved are found and absolutely held responsible, and that they are further charged with this, because any level of laxity or permissiveness or just, it wasn't that bad, I guess. Yeah, no, not acceptable.
Correct. And, like I said, it sends a bad message because if you use a gun or threaten someone with a gun, you need to go to jail. You do. And these little twits need to be prosecuted.
I would agree with that. Anyone doing that in any circumstance absolutely comes up. But the fact that again, don't usually chase individual crimes, but the fact that this is not the only incident, and could be argued that there's a few that either I've heard of personally or have been reported in the community, including that just absolute golden child of a genius that was shooting out of a window and videotaping it, putting it on social media, just real dumbassery. Anyway, that these things have been happening, if infrequently but at all, is just beyond unacceptable.
Understood. Anyway, I turn the mic over to you, and you have a good evening.
Yeah, sure thing. You as well. Appreciate the point in the call. You have a good one there. All right, and with that, I think we'll just go ahead and take that next break right now so as to be able to get into the calls that are coming on there. So if you want to chime in, add your 2 cents there. Of course, that number 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. And again, if you got stuff that you want us to talk about here, you can certainly bring it up. But if you bring it up as, you didn't talk about this, and therefore you're a bad person and don't want us to know about it, get right out of here. If you want to bring it up, bring it up. But if you're bringing it up as you didn't mention this, therefore you're clearly opposed to it. We don't mention every murder that happens in town either. And yet I will fight you if you try to say, therefore you're pro-murder, because that's not how this works. So if you actually want to talk about things, the issues, that phrase I say every damn show. Anyway, point is that if you actually want to talk about stuff, let me know. And in the meantime, got to take that break again. Phone number 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. Back after this break with more. Stay tuned.
Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Hello, I'm Erica Castillo with this KFOX 14 News Update. A new Border Patrol chief for the El Paso sector has officially been named. Chief Anthony Scott Good replaces Chief Gloria Chavez this week. Chavez was reassigned 5 months ago to lead the Rio Grande Valley sector where she grew up. Agent Peter Huckes, who took over in the interim, will return to his duties in this sector as deputy chief. And El Paso City Council voted today to name retired Army Colonel Kerry Weston as interim city manager. In a 7-1 vote, Weston was appointed. City Representative Henry Rivera voted against the item. Rivera cited being left out in conversations about the agenda item. Weston currently works for the city part-time as a senior operations officer. The employment contract of Tommy Gonzalez was terminated without good cause after a tie-breaking vote on February 28th. Weston will become full-time and assist Gonzalez up until his last day on June 29th. Weston will assume the interim city manager role on June 30th. I'm Erica Castillo with this KFOX 14 News Update.
News Radio 690. Traffic all day.
Westbound on Border Highway near the Zaragoza exit, there's a vehicle fire that's not quite out of the left lane. Left lane partially blocked and the left shoulder also. Injury accident, Kenworthy, north of Diana Drive. El Paso police on the scene of a crash, Dyer, south of the Loop at Annette Drive. And heavy traffic on Mesa Street northbound, on and off slowing from Wyoming Yandell downtown exits to the I-10 with 5-minute delays. Carrie Edwards, El Paso traffic.
From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, I'm Chief Meteorologist Brad Montgomery. Lows for tonight getting down into the 40s and 50s, so you want a light jacket or a jacket for your Wednesday morning. And then we're talking about gusty winds for tomorrow. West-southwest winds about 30 to 40 miles per hour and still mild for tomorrow, high around 77 degrees. Continued windy conditions for your Thursday, 20% chance of a shower, a little bit cooler with a high around 70. From the KFOX 14 Severe Weather Center, I'm Chief Meteorologist Brad Montgomery.
This report is sponsored by the Truth with Lisa Booth podcast.
What is it like to be a corporate executive with today's woke mob trying to hold you hostage? We'll talk to Jennifer Say, who lost her job for speaking out against school closures during COVID. Listen to The Truth with Lisa Booth every Monday and Thursday, but you can listen throughout the week on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey, El Paso, Ivan Ochoa, General Manager of Sunland Park Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram Fiat. Our goal is to make March an all-time record month in sales, so we'll do whatever it takes to make a deal. Don't wait. Visit us today for huge savings.
Save big on hundreds of new and certified pre-owned vehicles during Ram Truck Month at Sunland Park Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Fiat. Upside down your car, truck, or SUV, we want it, even if you owe thousands more than it's worth. Right now, get $3,000 off MSRP on 2023 Ram 1500, plus super low 4.9% APR for 72 months. Get $4,000 off MSRP on 2023 Jeep Gladiator Sport or $4,500 off MSRP on 2023 Jeep Grand Cherokee L models. Worried about your credit? Don't sweat it. Our lenders will push to approve your credit, even if your credit is less than perfect. Trade and upgrade for less at Sunland Park Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Fiat. Where buying a car is fun at I-10 at Sunland Park Drive or online at sunlandparkdodge.com. Estamos en tu esquina, El Paso. El Paso Strong. Includes factory rebate and dealer discount plus TTNL. 4.9% APR is $1,606 per thousand finance on select vehicles with approved credit. Offers not combined.
Hi, I'm Kyle at Blindster.com. If you're like many people, you may think custom blinds is a job for expensive professionals. Well, at Blindster, if you have a tape measure and a screwdriver, you can install our custom blinds and save big. Plus, we guarantee they'll fit. Blindster.com.
This report is sponsored by Blindster.com.
News on the hour and a half. Traffic and weather all day.
I don't watch television, so I get all my news from you.
News Radio 690 KTSM.
I adopted Bento in 2010 from a shelter. A lot of people know him as Keyboard Cat.
That's just one adoption story that started at a shelter. Visit theshelterpetproject.org to find a pet near you. Brought to you by Maddie's Fund, the Humane Society of the United States, and the Ad Council.
News Radio 690 KTSM El Paso.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, call 915-544-KTSM or follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for joining us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I am your host, Andrew J. Polk. Thank you for tuning in, however you may be doing so, be it on air, online, live streaming through the free and reliable iHeartRadio app, or joining us over on the various social media pages. We're up on facebook.com/Talk El Paso, the Talk El Paso channel over on YouTube, Twitter at Talk El Paso, or twitch.tv. Andrew J. Polk, those dropping those likes and reacts, we appreciate, because it helps us with all those algorithmic things, including Nat Olson, Groku Manda, Amber Banda, Sean Gardner, Ted Kors, James Ratcliffe, Angel Villagran, James Holmes, Flaco Jimenez, Ida Beza Gardner, Monica Cervantes, and Robbie Flores. Do appreciate it. and of course the conversation going on over there, including RJ Promotes talking about the complaint against one of the city reps and talk about creepy. That's what he's mentioning there. Yeah, I'll agree with that, because the story, as we talked about last week, actually, with El Paso Inc. editor Robbie Gray on the report that they had received on it. Yeah, it's not a good look. I just got to say, they're referring to the reprimand, and I think for the training that's coming for that city rep involved in there. Yeah, just don't be creepy. That shouldn't be that hard. Anyway, let's go to those phone lines here right now. We do have trying to get to many calls we can before the end of the show. Just keep that number in mind, 915-544-5876, 544-KTSM. We do have Jerry on the northwest side of town here with us right now. Jerry, thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you, Andrew, for taking my call. I want to talk about what happened on the bridge.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it's El Paso Dornate Bridge. With I'm thinking it's like a attempted invasion, basically. Could it be called that?
It's been discussed that way. The two major factors that I have seen coming out, both from videos that were on the scene or from those that were like actually Mexican officials that were talking about this. There was one that there may have been this idea getting spread through social media for people essentially waiting in Mexico to try and present themselves to the U.S. that it was Sunday was quote unquote Migrants Day, and therefore there would be free and unobstructed entry into the United States. Obviously not true, but the idea seemed persuasive, or that there was frustration with the CBP-1 app, with at least some that made it to the apex of the bridge, saying that they weren't able to get through, they weren't able to schedule, and therefore they were, well, some were calling it a protest, but I know it has been described elsewhere as being an attempted forced crossing.
Yeah, so that could be attempted invasion, basically. So they're skirting the laws anyway. Just coming through without going through the proper procedures.
Certainly.
Okay. Anyway, I'd like to continue on with this discussion about the laws itself. As Andrew from the website had discussed, there is a separation in there, not only from the states, but within the federal government itself, between the branches of government.
Mm-hmm.
And so Joe Biden signed, or was going to sign, an executive order today trying to force the background check on individuals.
Right.
Well, there's a law, Public Law 99-308, enacted on May 19, 1986, which is referred to as the FOPA, which is Firearm Owners Protection Act.
Okay.
And in that law, it has who can sell and who cannot sell, and who needs a license to do the selling.
Mm-hmm.
And let me read it to you here. It's 18 U.S. Code 921, Section C, is applied to a dealer in firearms as identified in Section 92 AX1XA, a person who devotes time, attention, and labor to dealing in firearms as a regular course of trade or business with the principal objective of livelihood or profits through the respective purchase and resale of firearms. But such terms shall not include a person who makes occasional sales, exchanges, or purchases of firearms for the enhancement of a personal collection for a hobby, or who sells all or part of his personal collection of firearms. And Section D also reads the same thing, but it has to do with dealers of firearms, that bring in collections from out of country. So that executive order, according to this law, is not a legal executive order.
So I get what you're saying is that it's in convention of that because there is protection. You have the Firearm Owners Protection Act from 1986 and things like that. And yet, I'm not saying I entirely disagree with you here, but what I'm going to talk about right now is the fact that this fits quite a lot of previous efforts. I want to say it was going on particularly during the Obama administration, no surprise, but then definitely even before and earlier in this part of and I want to say even a little bit during the Trump administration, ATF efforts going on to crack down on the quote-unquote kitchen table FFLs. So people who have had, an FFL for themselves, not like actually registered to a business, as being a lot more kind of cracked down or focused on. So not necessarily saying you can't have it, but there's regulation, there's the policies you have to follow, and then there's the actual checkup that comes on them, and that's where the devil is always in the details. But then also there has been a lot more kind of on the side of it, the same way that private individuals who were doing like more than one a year by some accounts that I said, and this goes back several years, were getting a few more calls or any calls at all from the ATF, or even people showing up at the door saying, hey, we have noticed such things, and they often had like printouts with them. So we need to have a discussion about what you're doing or if you're in violation of the law. So again, not necessarily disagreeing with your analysis here, but I see this as a continuation of these efforts that have been going on when it comes to that. Basically, the argument has been, and kind of not exactly jurisprudence, because this hasn't really made it to any significant cases that I'm aware of, but that's repeated sales, even if they are infrequent, but happening even more than like once a year, where a private individual without holding an FFL, federal firearms license, is doing sales, and there is evidence of such, posting it online, etc., that they are therefore saying that, well, you are essentially acting as an FFL without having an FFL. That has been the argument. Let me just say it that way.
Well, that's not what the law says. And like they say, no one is above the law. Why are they not following the law to the letter? It says, even in their collection, private individuals getting rid of their collection. Okay. So they are not following the law.
Well, as I'm sure we all know, there's a difference between the letter and the spirit of the law, and the spirit of the law, as not being written down, can be subject to interpretation and even convention by like what is going through. I mean, Supreme Court cases are a great example of that the interpretation of the law, and therefore what can be challenged and what can be brought up, can indeed change and flux. And so it seems like, again, the trajectory is more what I'm referring to here, has been the idea that any amount of sales beyond one, and maybe even including one, that may be the trajectory it's on, is going to eventually, is being said as you need to be using an FFL. Seems to be, that's been some of the conversations I've seen anyway about, okay, if I've even seen like collectors posting online saying, okay, what do I need to do to deal with this, or estate sales? And a lot of the conversation comes down to is you need to retain an FFL to end up doing those transfers if you don't want to be having these issues. So, I mean, there's always, again, what the law exactly says and kind of which way the balance of power is. And it does seem to be shifting that way towards this kind of, well, the activity that needs to be done.
Well, why do we have laws written then if they're going to change them by their own whim and what they think? But that's my point. And incidentally, if they can't legally change the laws by going through Congress like they should do, who is the legislatures, the people that make the laws, and the executive branch is only the ones who enforce the laws, who's supposed to enforce the laws. They're not legally bound to make laws by the Constitution. That's not their job.
This is true, and this is why the laws that I appreciate the most, as much can be said, are the ones that I find myself having the least issue with, probably better put, are the ones that are the most specific. Because when we start talking about breadth and just kind of almost aspirational in other ways, yeah, that's when we get into problems, because therefore, if there's interpretation left open, I mean, there's reasons, kind of what you're talking about here, that like the Congressional Review Act exists in order for policies that have been implemented by agencies to be reviewed as saying, okay, no, you're overstepping the law, or sure, we didn't explicitly prohibit that, and yet you're doing it and shouldn't be. I mean, there's the rules, and then there's how you implement the rules, as devils being absolutely in the details.
Well, from what I understand, an executive order only applies to the government workers, federal government workers. Yes. It does not apply to civilians, nor does it apply to state workers or county workers or city workers. They are not considered federal government employees. So it's military and federal government employees.
Correct. And so part of those instructions, going back to the whole initial part here of that executive order today, it is including direction to the Attorney General to essentially focus more on background checks by citing some from our national news partners here, by cracking down on gun sellers who don't perform them when required, with the goal of, quote, moving us as close as we can to universal background checks without new legislation, end quote.
Yeah, so he's basically trying to take the change the law with the stroke of his pen. So that makes him a dictator, right?
I can see why you'd argue that way, but this is why, again, this is why not having specificity of law is a bad thing in general. I'll put it that way.
Well, it's exactly what Joe Biden said about Donald Trump. When you have to make laws through executive order, that makes you a dictator. Those are his, and not exact words. That's paraphrasing what he said back in, I don't know what it was, 2020 or 2019.
I mean, we've heard this so many different ways. What was it, before 2016? I've got a phone and a pen, or we got to get something done. This is why I keep coming back to an idea more largely that if a power exists that you like when it's your people in power, but you would hate it if someone else has control of it, maybe it shouldn't exist. And I feel like that applies exactly to this scenario.
Yes, and it also applied when Donald Trump was trying to outlaw bump stocks.
Yep.
I don't own a bump stock, but those people that had bump stocks and wanted to waste ammo and have fun, hey, let them have fun. It doesn't cause the weapon to fire by itself. It just enhances the ability to fire faster. That's all it does.
Right. Yeah, no, get what you're saying there. So, yeah, there's, let's just say the government overreach of all stripes, regardless of who does it, is something that I am not in favor of.
Well, nice to talk with you there, Andrew, and I hope some of your listeners out there understand that, yes, when you have to change a law through an executive order, that makes you a dictator. I will agree with Joe Biden on that.
Fair enough.
Thank
You're
you,
welcome.
sir.
Thanks for the point in the call. Do appreciate it. All right. I think we have time for at least one more call here. Squeeze in what we can. We do have Raul in the Northeastern line with us here right now. Raul, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Andrew. Well, what would affect El Paso would be bank failures. I was once a loan officer while my company became part of Citigroup. That was back in 1998 when Citibank merged with Travelers Group. My company was part of Travelers at the time. And in the process, back then, we became the world's largest financial institution. But then after Bush number 2's Great Recession and Citigroup losing more money than any other bank, and then being bailed out by Uncle Sam, who later sold the stock it had purchased at a profit. So actually they ended up making some money and played a part in keeping the financial system from collapsing, as it almost did. But anyway, banking is not rocket science. Mortgage lending and lending in general is not rocket science. And nobody made the banks make bad loans. It's a fairly straightforward process. Now, what the banks do is, as you know, is they take that money and they only have to keep a certain percentage of it available for
the reserve fractional banking,
daily transactions, the required reserve requirements, and then the rest they can invest. But then they started just making some really dumb decisions to include lending people money for homes that they couldn't afford, based on the assumption that home values always go up. Well, over the long run, most do, but not everywhere, not all the time. You know, and then they package those. Then they were allowed to package those mortgages into securities, and they lost their character. So nobody knew what it really was, and then it crashed. So this is a result of Trump's rollback of the Dodd-Frank regulations, and they led directly to the crash of the Silicon Valley bank failure. And it wasn't because they were a woke bank. That's ridiculous. All this woke stuff is a smokescreen. It's just a distraction from talking about real solutions to problems. It was a woke bank. It was run by a bunch of guys. Silicon Valley kind of folks over there, techies guys, quants and so forth. So this is what happens when you deregulate financial institutions. And although I come from that industry, I can tell you from personal experience, there's a lot of
chicanery and
Sure.
lying and deception in the industry. Not so much in the bank, but much more in the insurance industry than in the banking. And in the securities industry, yeah, I mean, they recorded guys out there, I don't remember which of the big brokerages it was, but it was one of those brokers talking to another broker saying, yeah, these are POSs, just package them up and sell them.
I want to say kind of in general, on the subject you're going through here, I often mention movies, but one that definitely comes up to mind here is The Big Short, that stars Christian Bale and a few others, famous names in there. Was Brad Pitt technically in that? Yeah, he was. And that does a pretty good both kind of docudrama and then kind of documentary. I don't know. It's kind of weirdly in between because it's definitely kind of a drama, character driven, but then has these random explainers of what that system was. It's been a pretty good primer, and I've used it as kind of launching board for myself to look more into what was going on there and how the issues with it came about. Because, yeah, gambling with people's money is not exactly what I think the average person would expect or accept that banks would do. So, yeah, I mean, the bank failures or the potential of them and the spread of the contagion, as it's been put kind of nationally, is certainly concerning. Of course, the administration has said that they are going to make sure it's not going to happen. FDIC saying that they're going to return all of the deposits, not even just the $250,000 that was included there. I mean, there were big business implications, particularly for the Silicon Valley Bank, with a whole lot of big tech firms that people would recognize. Maybe not the biggest names, but I think like subsidiaries of Google and such end up being and having major of their deposits there. So it's not an insignificant issue. And that's been pretty much a big focus of the administration, has been trying to prevent bank runs or stuff like that. The stock market has been having mixed responses as we keep hearing about it. But yeah, it's certainly impacting, though. We're trying to encapsulate, maybe work on a little bit more on that, on the actual part of that. But yeah, on the whole mortgage loan and the packaging of the whole subprime mortgage crisis was bad business overall. But it's, the way I see it anyway, was kind of as a, well, they're doing it and they're making just tons of money, so why shouldn't we? So it's kind of a, well, we talked about it previously, a meme within the business and the banking community of, well, we can get away with this as well as we can, and they ended up strangling the golden goose by going way too far because, yeah, ambition without guide rails often ends up being, or at least, integrity behind it, ends up not being that great of a thing in the long run here, because everything has its reasonable limits. Anyway, I appreciate the point of the call on those parts of it. We got to take that next break right now so we can get to the end of the hour and tell you what we got coming up for you here. So taking that break right now. Stay tuned. Telling you what we got coming up for you and a little bit more on Talk El Paso on News Radio 690 KTSM. Stay tuned.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
No new accidents on your El Paso freeways, but slow traffic on the 54 southbound from Stan Roberts down to Kenworthy. It's 10-minute delays. A vehicle fire from earlier in the lower valley on Border Highway westbound before Padres Drive. That fire is out. That car fire is out. An injury accident, Kenworthy north of Diana Drive, and slow traffic on Montana eastbound McRae to Zaragoza. 10-minute delays. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
This report is sponsored by Our American Stories. He's been called the most important American composer of the 20th century, and his career started out in segregated clubs. We'll have the story of Duke Ellington. Be sure to catch this week's edition of Our American Stories on the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcast, wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome to the CPAP Games live from the Hayes bedroom. It's another eventful night, Bruce.
It sure is, Ron. Steve has been struggling with his CPAP.
His wife, Michelle, is trying to contain her rage.
Michelle throws an elbow.
She's leaving for the couch.
Steve should get Inspire.
Absolutely, Bruce. Inspire is a sleep apnea treatment that gives you comfortable, restful sleep with the click of a remote. There's no mask and no hose. Just sleep.
Learn more at inspiresleep.com.
Inspire is not for everyone. Talk to your doctor to see if it's right for you and review important safety information at inspiresleep.com.
The El Paso Community Foundation supports the causes you feel passionate about here in the borderland, whether it's education, social services, arts and culture, the environment, health, or economic development. The El Paso Community Foundation has been promoting philanthropy and progress in our hometown region for more than 45 years. Make your mark with us. Start a fund today for good, for El Paso, forever. Learn more at epcf.org. That's epcf.org.
At Staples, school is always in session.
And savings never take a holiday, especially now. During Staples Teacher Palooza, you can save even more on everything for school, like 25% on classroom decor and stickers, and save up to 40% on trusted brands for the classroom, like Post-it, Papermate, and Elmer's. Whether you're a teacher restocking your classroom or a parent looking to help, during Staples Teacher Palooza, everyone saves big. But deals end soon, so hurry to Staples, your working and learning store. Offers end 3/18, in-store only while supplies last.
And now Martha Stewart for Skechers. When I make a dish or embark on a craft project, I always use the finest, most fabulous ingredients and materials. Which is why, when it comes to footwear, I love Skechers. Because Skechers is the comfort technology company and uses the most luxurious, innovative materials and designs to make wondrously comfortable footwear with all the fits and features like Arch Fit and Skechers' world-famous air-cooled memory foam. It's exactly the way I'd make shoes.
Find Skechers at a Skechers store, Skechers.com, or wherever stylish footwear is sold.
For more than 45 years, the El Paso Community Foundation has worked with individuals and nonprofits to address the unique opportunities and challenges in our vibrant multicultural community. Every dollar goes to bettering our region. For more information about the foundation, establishing a fund of your own, or giving to an existing fund or project, go to epcf.org. That's epcf.org. For good, for El Paso, forever.
The Good Feet Store, improving people's lives 2 feet at a time.
El Paso's News Radio 690 KTSM.
Live from the KTSM AM 690 studios, it's Talk El Paso with Andrew J. Polk. To be a part of the show, follow on Facebook at facebook.com/Talk El Paso. Now here's your host, Andrew J. Polk.
Thank you all so very much for having joined us here for Talk El Paso, airing live on News Radio 690 KTSM. I've been your host, Andrew J. Polk. We've got a couple of things we're working on for you, including that smart meter discussion. Still working on that. Expecting to have that on this week. And also more things, including, AI development, those systems that we've seen percolating through, and what that kind of might mean, what the development going into it is anyway, and a whole lot more. I mean, we got the legislative session going on, and we're in the kind of real rubber hitting the road part of the session. So we'll keep talking about the bills and the other things coming through and out of that, as well as the New Mexico one. We've already have bills being signed there. So a whole lot more we got coming up for you. And we got a lot of stuff going on, and putting in the comments. But let me just say this. If ever you're just calling someone names, just saying you're bad, you're this, I've assigned a label to you that makes you bad in my eyes, you're not actually addressing what someone has to say, the issues. Yeah, you're actually just abdicating your contention to the argument, just saying, well, I don't like you, therefore you're wrong. And that's just giving up in my mind. Anyway, well, that's why I don't do it, among other things. But we'll have to leave it there for today because we are super out of time for this show. So we'll do it again tomorrow, as we do every Monday through Friday, 4 to 6 p.m. So until then, until next time, I want everyone to stay safe out there, look twice for motorcycles when out on the road, and have a great evening, y'all. We'll see you tomorrow.
Traffic all day. News Radio 690.
No new accidents on your El Paso freeways, but slow traffic on the 54 southbound from Stan Roberts down to Kenworthy. It's 10-minute delays. A vehicle fire from earlier in the lower valley on Border Highway westbound before Padres Drive. That fire is out. That car fire is out. An injury accident, Kenworthy north of Diana Drive, and slow traffic on Montana eastbound McRae to Zaragoza. 10-minute delays. Kerry Edwards, El Paso traffic.
Hi guys, it's Mark. Are you struggling with erectile dysfunction? Did you know that a major medical breakthrough is now available and it isn't a pill? Today, Tuesday, March 14th, we're running a one-day special you won't want to miss out on. Northbrook Medical Clinic uses the most powerful form of wave therapy. This is a technology clinically shown to repair blood vessels and improve blood flow. It's backed by 60 clinical studies, including from Cambridge. If you're ready to regain that spark in the bedroom, today is your day. Call us now and you'll qualify for the assessment and ultrasound totally free. You'll also get a gift that can produce rapid and powerful results in the bedroom in minutes. You're going to love that one, guys. Trust me. And today only, we're offering 5 tune-up treatments to our patients free. This is an unprecedented offer worth hundreds of dollars, but call today and qualify